Okay, so let us start with the physiology of excretion. Till now we have studied the different type of excretion, the structures of the excretory system, that is the structure of kidney, nephron, urethra, urinary bladder and all that. Now we'll be starting with the physiology of excretion. It means the mechanism how the urine is formed, urine formation, mechanism of urine formation. Now the nephric excretion, see there are different type of excretion which are occurring apart from kidney as well. The excretion which are taking place from the kidney is called as nephric excretion. It involves the formation of urine. Okay. Now it occurs in three steps mainly, that is glomerular filtration, tubular reabsorption and tubular secretion. Glomerular filtration, tubular reabsorption and tubular secretion. The first one is the glomerular filtration. Glomerular filtration is also called as ultrafiltration. Now, the blood present in the glomerular capillary is separated from the capsular space. As we know that the blood which is present between here, the blood present in this glomerular capillary is separated from this Bowman's capsule by different layers. Okay, so the blood present in glomerular capillaries is separated from the capsular space of Bowman's capsule by endothelial covering of blood vessel. That is the blood vessels covering. Okay, then the basement membrane of the blood vessel, basement membrane of visceral layer, and visceral layer of inner wall of Bowman's capsule. So here we can say it is having this endothelial membrane of the blood vessels. Okay, then the basement membrane of blood vessel, basement membrane of blood vessel, then the inner visceral layer of the Bowman's capsule. Okay, basement membrane of visceral layer, and the visceral layer of the inner wall of the Bowman's capsule. Now, the actual barrier between the blood and capsule space consists of two base membrane basically. So the actual barrier basically consists of two basement membranes. Okay. Now the development of the filtration paper. Now the inner visceral membrane has got a specific cells called podocytes, which are permeable to a specific molecules. They will be having pores. Okay, which will allowing the filtration particularly. Okay. Now let us see. We know that for the filtration to occur, there has to be some pressure to be built up. Okay. The development of the filtration pressure. The blood flows through the glomerular capillaries under a pressure. The blood flow through the glomerular capillary under the pressure, and this pressure is basically exerted due to mainly two reasons. Okay. And the first reason is that the diameter of the afferent arteriole is higher compared to the efferent arteriole. The diameter of the afferent arteriole is higher compared to the diameter of efferent arteriole, due to which what will happen? The efferent arteriole will be less in diameter, so the blood will be present in the high pressure. Blood will be flowing under the high pressure. Okay. Next, let us see over here how it can do. So suppose this is the afferent arteriole, this is the efferent arteriole. Okay, so here this diameter is less compared to this. So when blood flows through this, it will be under high pressure. Okay. So next, the pressure which is developed in the glomerulus is mainly due to the combination of different pressures. The first one we can see the glomerular hydrostatic pressure. What is glomerular hydrostatic pressure? It is a pressure which is exerted on the walls of capillaries, and this is a pressure exerted by the walls of capillaries. It's a pressure exerted by the walls of capillaries due to the pumping action of heart. So it's a pressure exerted by the wall of capillary due to pumping action of heart. Okay. Now apart from this, the Bowman's capsule, the glomerulus will be also having some other pressures as well. So the pressure exerted by the pumping heart is basically the glomerular hydrostatic pressure, GHP. Now the capillaries will be also having the blood, and this blood will be having colloidal particles, mainly the protein particles, okay, proteinaceous content, which will be also exerting pressure on the wall, which will be also exerting pressure on the wall. So this will be called as blood colloidal osmotic pressure, BCOP. So here we have seen two pressures, that is 60 mm of Hg is the GHP, which is exerted by the pumping heart, and the other one is the osmotic pressure, BCOP, blood colloidal osmotic pressure, that is around 30 mm of Hg. Now the third pressure is the pressure of interstitial fluid and the pressure of the renal filtrate. The interstitial fluid which is present over here will be also exerting some pressure on this, okay, and that pressure is called as CHP, capsular hydrostatic pressure. So this pressure this pressure is due to the interstitial fluid present in the capsule, okay, so which is responsible for developing pressure on the capillaries. So now it has got three pressures, that is GHP, glomerular hydrostatic pressure, exerted by the pumping heart, okay. Next, the blood colloidal osmotic pressure, that is BCOP, exerted by the colloidal particles present in blood, and that is CHP, that is 20 mm of Hg, which is developed by the capsule, interstitial fluid present in capsule, okay. So these are the three different pressures. Now altogether we can say the pressure which is required or which is responsible for filtration is called as glomerular filtration pressure, GFP. Glomerular filtration pressure, that is GFP, is around 10 mm of Hg. How it can be calculated? That is GFP is equal to GHP minus BCOP plus CHP. So this GFP is basically, which is the one which is required for the filtration, is obtained by GHP, that is 60 minus the sum of the BCOP plus CHP, okay. So that will be 30 plus 20 is equal to 10 mm Hg. So this GFP, that is glomerular filtration pressure, is about 10 mm Hg. Here you can see the GFP is obtained by the pressure which is exerted on the GFP will be basically due to the mainly two reasons. That is the GHP is exerted by pumping heart, BCOP, that is exerted by the colloidal particles, and the capsule pressure, that is the CHP, that is the capsule hydrostatic pressure exerted by the interstitial fluid present in the capsule. So that was about the glomerular filtration pressure, okay. Next is ultrafiltration. Ultrafiltration is now we have seen the filtration pressure which is required. Now let us see the ultrafiltration. What is it? What is ultrafiltration? Okay. Now it's the net hydrostatic pressure of, we have seen net hydrostatic pressure required is the 10 mm of Hg. Now the capillaries present in the glomerulus will be having net 10 mm of Hg more pressure than the capsule compared to the lumen in the Bowman's capsule, okay. So we say that there is a net higher hydrostatic pressure of 10 mm of Hg in the lumen of glomerular capillaries as compared to the lumen of the Bowman's capsule. So the filtrable components of blood pressures are passed out of the glomerular capillaries. Okay, so the filtrable components will be passing from the glomerular capillaries to the Bowman's capsule. They pass through the endothelial fenestration, and fenestration means these are the extensions of those epithelial cells. They will be passing through it, and these are forming the spores, which will be forming small spores or slits opening, which are the part of podocytes. Okay, so they pass through the endothelial fenestration, basement membrane, and filtration slits. They will be passing through all these three layers, that is the endothelial fenestrations, basement membranes, and the filtration slits of podocytes to enter the lumen of the Bowman's capsule. What are podocytes? These are the cells of the Bowman's capillaries. Okay. Next, nephric or glomerular filtration. Nephric filtration or glomerular filtration. Now, about 1100 to 1200 ml of blood is put to filtration into kidney every minute. So every minute around 1/5 of the total blood, that is around 1/5 of the total blood, which around a human body will be having 5 liters of blood. Out of that, around 1 to 1.2 liter of blood will be put for filtration every minute in both the kidneys. Okay, and this will be pumped by the heart as well. Now it produces glomerular or nephric filtrate. The filtrate which is produced during this ultrafiltration will be around 125 ml per minute. So this is about the nephric filtrate which is produced is 125 ml, and this rate of filtration is called as glomerular filtration rate of, or GFR. So what is GFR? It is the total glomerular filtrate produced during 1 minute. Okay, so although the blood which is pumped within this heart, the blood which is pumped in this kidney is around 1100 ml or 200 ml, or 1 to 1.2 liter of blood is pumped into the kidney every minute, but out of this only 125 ml of filtrate is produced, and that is called as glomerular filtration rate. So it is also much high in amount. So this all of amount is not basically released as a urine. It has got a lot of substances which are useful, okay, and it has got a lot of water which is basically reabsorbed, okay. Otherwise, if the such amount of water is released, then the person will be may get dehydrated, okay. So rate of filtration is called as GFR, that is glomerular filtration rate, or GFR. It consists of water, various electrolytes. It consists of various electrolytes like sodium, potassium, calcium, magnesium, potassium, etc. It contains the biomolecules like glucose, amino acids, etc. Okay, and this filtration rate, this GFR, the filtrate is comparatively alkaline like the blood. It is the filtrate which is produced during this filtration, ultrafiltration, is the alkaline nature, and it is almost similar to blood. It is almost similar to blood, except like similar to the blood plasma, we can say. It is almost similar to the blood plasma, except that it will be excluding the large size particles. It will be not having all this blood corpuscles like RBC, WBCs and platelets and all that. It will not also have the fatty acids molecules and even the big proteins also. So it will be similar to the plasma, like they have got same alkaline pH and they will be having same type of plasma, but will be not having the bigger particles like the cells and the proteins and the fats and all that. Now, so what is ultrafiltration? We can say it's a separation of small volume of solids from large volume and solids and components due to filtration through a small sized pores or slits by the application of pressure is called ultrafiltration. What is ultrafiltration? Simple terms, we can say it's a separation of some solids from a different mixture of solids. It's a separation of the solids from mixture of solids, okay, by applying the pressure and passing it through the small pores. So what is ultrafiltration? It's a process of separating some specific solids from a mixture of solids, okay, by applying the pressure and passing it through the small pores. That is ultrafiltration. Okay, next is auto-regulation of the glomerular filtration. Now this glomerular filtration will be auto-regulated by mainly two methods, okay. The first one is myogenic auto-regulation. Myogenic, the term myo means the muscles, so here the muscles will be taking part, okay. So myogenic auto-regulation, and second is juxtaglomerular apparatus, or JGA. So first is myogenic auto-regulation. So whenever there is a rise in blood pressure, so the blood flow through the glomerular apparatus will increase. Okay. So whenever there is a rise in blood pressure, the blood flow through the glomerular apparatus will increase, due to which the stretching of vascular wall increases. Due to which what will happen? The vascular walls or the capillaries wall will start getting stretched. And this stretching will be responsible for passage of calcium ions. These calcium ions are the one which is responsible for contraction of muscles particularly. Okay, so when there is a high pressure in the capillaries wall, what will happen? This wall will get stretched, and when they get stretched, what will happen? The calcium ion will start passing into it. Okay, and due to this calcium ions, what will happen? The muscles or the cells will get the capillaries will get contracted. Okay, and this contraction checks the overstretching of vascular walls and raises the vascular resistance. So the rate of blood flow, or the GFR, are brought down to the normal temperature, normal condition. So here this stretching will be responsible for getting influx of the calcium ions, due to which it will get contracted, and hence this stretching is checked by the vascular walls of this stretching is checked by the contraction, and hence the GFR will be brought to the normal. Okay, that was about the myogenic auto-regulation. So here what happens? Simply the blood when flowing in very high pressure, okay, so it will be leading to the development of the pressure on the walls. of the capillaries, which will be responsible for stretching, and this stretching will be causing the influx of calcium ions, and this calcium ions when get inside will start contracting. This contraction leads to the checking of the overstretching of vascular walls, okay, and hence the GFR will be brought down. Next is juxtaglomerular apparatus, JGA, juxtaglomerular apparatus. So it's an apparatus which becomes active when there is a decrease in renal blood pressure. So whenever there is a decrease in blood pressure, this apparatus is basically getting activated. Okay, so normally it mainly gets activated when the renal blood pressure is increased, or if the GFR is decreased, if the decrease in the GFR. So whenever the blood pressure is decreased, GFR is going to decrease. That's sure. Okay, so when the GFR is decreased or the blood pressure is decreased, what will happen? This juxtaglomerular apparatus will get activated. So what does it do? It promotes the release of renin and juxtaglomerular cells. So when the this JGA is getting activated, it will be promoting the release of the renin. Now this renin is a specific type of hormone, or we can say it's type of hormone, or sometimes it can show the activity of enzyme as well. So it will be releasing the renin, and renin, it's a different renin. It's not similar to the digestive system which we have seen. In the digestive system, it will be the one which is responsible for digestion of proteins, of milk proteins particularly. This renin is produced from the renal, that is kidney, and hence it is called as renin. So what happens? When there's a high, the blood pressure is decreased. So what will happen? This will secrete the renin from the juxtaglomerular cells. This renin converts the protein angiotensinogen into peptide angiotensin. This renin is going to convert a protein called as angiotensinogen into angiotensin, which angiotensin is basically functioning as a potent vasopressor. Angiotensin is a hormone which is responsible for increasing the blood pressure of the blood vessels particularly. So that raises the glomerular blood pressure through constricting afferent arterioles. So what will happen when this renin is released? It will be converting angiotensinogen into angiotensin. This angiotensin will now constrict the efferent arterioles. Angiotensin will constrict the efferent arterioles, due to which the blood will be flowing under high pressure. Okay, and it will be restoring the GFR. It will be restoring the GFR. It also brings about the release of aldosterone. It will be also bringing out the release of the aldosterone, which has got activity of reabsorption of. It will be acting on the different parts of the kidney. We'll see in the further in the regulation. We will be discussing the regulation again as well. Okay, so this will be bringing out the release of aldosterone, which will be secreted by the adrenal gland particularly. Okay, and hence increasing the pressure. So two type of regulation, that is myogenic and juxtaglomerular apparatus. Next, the last regulation is these are the different auto regulation, right? So here they are basically regulating themselves. Okay, so no external structure or no external system is taking part. Next is the neural control. As we know that the neural control nervous system is the one of the most important part. So the blood vessels of the kidneys are intervenated. By nerve fibers of sympathetic nervous system. So they will be basically this kidneys will be having the whole network of these nerve fibers, which will be originating from the sympathetic nervous system. And when this get activated, nerve fiber bring about constriction of the renal arteries. They will be bringing out the constriction of the renal arteries and causes the decrease in the renal blood pressure. Okay, as well as the glomerular filtration rate. So they will be causing the constriction of the arteries, and hence the filtration rate and the blood pressure will be getting decreased. Okay, so that was about the glomerular filtration and glomerular filtration rate and all that. Next phase is the tubular reabsorption. Okay, so tubular reabsorption consists of basically ultrafiltration. Now we know that the ultrafiltration which we have seen is non-selective in nature. So it will be basically filtering everything which is getting into blood. So it will be filtering everything which is getting into the blood, into the kidney. Okay, and hence now this filtrate will be consisting lot of essential substance and nitrogen waste both. So waste has to be removed, but there are some essential substances as well like there will be hormones, there will be nutrition substance, there will be different electrolytes, there will be different minerals which are so important for the body, and the body cannot lose that amount of water. Every minute around 125 ml of the filtrate is produced. So body cannot remove or cannot just get remove this amount of water, otherwise it may get dehydrated. Okay, so this things has to be reabsorbed. The essential substances which are present in the filtrate has to be reabsorbed. This essential substance consists of the different electrolytes like sodium, potassium, etc., and magnesium, calcium, etc., and it also consists of the water also, and also like glucose and other substances also. So the filtrate contains both waste products as well as the useful essential solids. The absorption of the useful essential substances from glomerular filtrate by epithelium of uriniferous tubule is called as reabsorption. What is reabsorption? It's basically the absorption of the useful substances by the peritubular structures. We say peritubulars, okay, renal peritubulars or capillaries will be there, which will be reabsorb the substances. Now this reabsorption can be active or can be passive process. It can be active process or it can be passive process. Active reabsorption occurs against the concentration gradient. It means that it will be taking up the substances from low concentration to high concentration. So active reabsorption occurs against the concentration gradient. It means that it will be carrying out the movement of solids from low concentration to high concentration. Okay, and hence it requires energy in the form of ATP. And these ATPs are generated by mitochondria. So these cells which are taking part in the reabsorption has got high amount of mitochondria. Okay, and because they require the ATP, they will be also requiring the oxygen. So when we see it is the kidney which requires higher amount of oxygen. Compared to the heart. So although the heart is functioning so well, it's functioning so fast and it's continuously beating, but still the functionality, if we see, the kidney will be requiring more amount of oxygen compared to the heart. Okay, now second, it can also carry out the passive absorption. Passive absorption does not require energy. It means the movement of solids will be occurring from higher concentration to lower concentration. The movement of solids will be occurring from higher concentration to lower concentration. Right? That's the reabsorption. That is a passive reabsorption. Okay. Now all parts of uriniferous tubule, which is consisting proximal convoluted tubule, that is PCT, loop of Henle, which is having the ascending and descending tubules, then the distal convoluted tubule, that is DCT, and the collecting tubules. All the parts of nephron will be taking part in the tubular reabsorption. So here we can see, we'll be discussing this again. So here this is the PCT. Its epithelial cell of PCT has got the higher amount of microvilli responsible for increasing the surface area, and when these substances are taken inside like sodium glucose, this will be taken actively transportation. That it means it will be requiring the energy, and hence this will be having high amount of ATPs. Once they are inside, they will be taken to the peritubular capillary, which will be then taking them to the interstitial fluid and then to the different parts. Okay, so we'll see first reabsorption taking place in the proximal convoluted tubule. The first reabsorption is taking place in the proximal convoluted tubule. It's also called as PCT. PCT is a major seat of reabsorption. It's a major region. It's the most important region where the reabsorption is basically taking place. Okay, so for this the epithelial cells of the PCT contains abundant mitochondria. As we have seen, abundant mitochondria suggests that the PCT will be carrying out mostly the active reabsorption. Okay, so epithelial cells possess abundant mitochondria and microvilli. So here we can see this is the PCT cells. This is the PCT cells, epithelial cells, which has got this microvilli present over here. These microvilli are responsible for increasing the surface area for absorption. They are abundantly having abundant number of mitochondria so that they can carry out the formation of ATP, which is required for the active reabsorption. Okay, so microvilli increases absorptive surface area by around 20 times. Okay, so that the maximum amount of substances can be absorbed. It is believed that more than 2/3 volume of the glomerular filtrate, that's around 75% of the total filtrate, about 75% total filtrate is reabsorbed in PCT. It is believed that it's basically seen that around 75% of the total filtrate is reabsorbed in PCT. Okay, it means that the total of out of total glucose, 75%, 70% glucose, 70% sodium, or whole of the glucose, 75% of total water, and 90% of the carbonate ions. All these substances are taken up by the PCT itself. Okay, so around 2/3 of the substances will basically is reabsorbed in the PCT itself. Now this PCT will be absorbing the things in different manner, like the reabsorption of sodium, potassium and calcium occurs through active transport. So we can say that it can occur through active transport. The absorption of the sodium, potassium and calcium will be occurring through active transport. It means it will be requiring the energy. It will be requiring the energy in the form of ATPs, and hence we can say the sodium, potassium, calcium will be moving from lower concentration to higher concentration against the concentration gradient. The second is the glucose and amino acids. Glucose and amino acids, like solutes like glucose amino acids, will be transported along with some other substances which are actively transported, like the glucose will be transported with sodium. So such type of transportation, where the transportation take place with some other molecules which are being transported actively, is called as secondary active transportation. What is secondary active transportation? When a solute or substance is transported across the membrane along with some other substance which is transported actively, such is called as a secondary active transport. Okay, apart from this, the substances like ions like chlorine ions and others are reabsorbed simply by diffusion. Okay, while the water is also passes out and gets reabsorbed due to simple process of osmosis, that is from movement from higher concentration to lower concentration, or we can say diffusion. Okay, now reabsorption after PCT, there comes a loop of Henle. What is loop of Henle? Let us see. This is the loop of Henle. Here we can see this is the PCT, proximal convoluted tubule. This is the part where the maximum reabsorption is taking place. What all things are reabsorbed? So here 75% of water is reabsorbed, 90% of carbonate ions are reabsorbed, around 70%, 75% of NaCl is absorbed. Nutrients, like all of the nutrients like glucose and amino acids, will be reabsorbed over here. Okay. And this part, after this part, this proximal tubule just below this whole U-shaped structure is called as loop of Henle. And it has got again two parts. This is the descending loop of Henle and this is ascending loop of Henle. And this is ascending loop of Henle. Now descending loop of Henle will be also consisting two parts. That is thick segment, the segment which is thicker, having wide diameter, this thick segment, and then this is a thin segment. Okay, so let us see how this loop of Henle will be taking part in the reabsorption. So loop of Henle has got two parts. Okay, has got two parts, that is descending limb and the ascending limb. So loop of Henle is the seat of concentration. See, important, loop of Henle is the major part of the nephron where actually the concentration of urine occurs. It's a concentration of urine or concentration of filtrate rather. Right now we will not call it as a urine. So concentration of filtrate will occur. It means that the water amount which is present in the filtrate has to be still lowered down. Okay, so the tonicity is not much influenced, but the water has to be removed out from this filtrate. So in the descending limb, we can see there are two segments, that is thick segment and the thin segment. Thick segment is almost impermeable. So write it down. Thick segment is almost impermeable, so it does not take part much in the reabsorption. But the second part is thin segment, which lies in the hypertonic interstitial fluid of medulla. Now see here, this thin segment here. This is the thin segment. It is basically surrounded by interstitial fluid, and this interstitial fluid is hypertonic. It means that it will be having high concentration of solute within it. So when the surrounding fluid is hypertonic, so the fluid or the filtrate present in this thin segment, this filtrate present within the thin segment will be having lower concentration of solute, and we can say here the water amount will be high, so the water will be moving from high concentration to low concentration by simple diffusion. Okay, so in the thin segment, because the thin segment is surrounded by the hypertonic fluid, interstitial fluid, it will now releases out the H2O from it. It will now releases out H2O from it by diffusion, by simple diffusion. Okay, it will release out this H2O from it by simple diffusion. This will be responsible for removal of H2O by simple diffusion. Okay, now because the H2 is released, H2 is removed out, so the filtrate will be having more concentrated, and hence we can say the loop of Henle's descending limb, the descending limb of loop of Henle is and the thin segment of the descending limb of loop of Henle is concentrating segment. It is concentrating segment. Why? Because it is removing out the solvent. It is removing out the solvent, and hence it is increasing the concentration of the solute in the filtrate. It is increasing the concentration of solute in the filtrate, and hence we can say it is a concentrating segment. Okay. Next is a ascending limb. So ascending limb is the second part of the loop of Henle, which is moving towards the upper side. Okay. Now the ascending limb is impermeable to water. It's write down. You have to note it down that the descending limb was highly permeable to water. It was basically only releasing out the water, but while the ascending limb is totally impermeable to water, it means the water will neither move out nor it will come inside. So the thin segment and the thick segment will be there again. The thin segment loses the NaCl to the interstitial fluid through diffusion. So now thin segment, as we have seen, it will be having more amount of solid concentration. So in the thin segment, what will happen? This NaCl will be removed out by simple diffusion. So here we can see this is the thin segment of the ascending. This is the ascending segment. This is the ascending limb. Okay, having two segments. This is the thin segment, and this is the thick segment. This thin segment will be now removing out this NaCl. This thin segment will be removing out this NaCl. Okay, by simple diffusion from high concentration to low concentration. While this thick segment, this is by simple diffusion. This NaCl will be removed by the simple diffusion. But in the case of thick segment, here, okay, in the case of thick segment, the NaCl is transported outside by active transportation. The NaCl is transported outside by active transportation. So in the thin segment, it is by passive transportation, that is by simple diffusion. While in the case of thick segment, it is by transported by active transportation, okay, which will require energy. And this contributes to high osmolarity of the intermedullary of the kidney. Because it will be releasing out the NaCl in a high amount, so the interstitial fluid will be having high concentration of NaCl, due to which the osmolarity of the inner medulla of kidney will be higher. Okay. Now this filtrate becomes hypotonic, and to the blood plasma, the filtrate, because it has released out the most major part of the NaCl, now it will be having low amount of solutes, and hence this filtrate will become hypotonic. Now this filtrate will become hypotonic to blood plasma in ascending limb, and hence we can say it is a diluting segment. So the descending limb was the concentrating segment. Note it down, the descending limb was the concentrating segment, while the ascending limb is diluting segment. Ascending limb is diluting segment. Okay. So that was about the reabsorption in loop of Henle. Next is reabsorption in convoluted tubules. Reabsorption in the distal convoluted tubules, or we can say DCT. Reabsorption in the DCT, or we can say distal convoluted tubules. Now over here, it is basically affected by specific hormones. It will be undertaking the reabsorption, will be taking place under the activity of hormones. The hormones are aldosterone and vasopressin. Aldosterone and vasopressin are hormones which are responsible for activating, or we can say responsible for reabsorption into DCT. They will be induces the DCT to reabsorb. Now aldosterones will be responsible for actively reabsorption of the sodium and chlorine. Okay, so aldosterone will be responsible for reabsorption of sodium and chlorine actively, okay, in the DCT. So they under the effect of aldosterone. So DCT will be reabsorbing the sodium ions and chlorine ions under the effect of aldosterone through active transportation. It means through utilizing the energy from lower concentration to higher concentration. Okay, it will be also taking up the HCO3, that is carbonate ions, which will be again getting inside this DCT again by active transportation. Next is the vasopressin, or is ADH. Vasopressin, the name itself suggests it's a hormone which is released by the hypothalamus and poured into the blood by the pituitary gland. So vasopressin name itself suggests it is responsible for pressing the vessels. That is, the blood vessels will be contracted. Okay, so it is responsible for maintaining the blood pressure. Okay, and it is also called ADH, that is antidiuretic hormone. Antidiuresis means to remove the urine or the expulsion of urine. So it basically prevent that urine release, particularly, or we can say prevent the water loss from the body. So it is vasopressin. Under the effect of vasopressin, the DCT, that is distal convoluted tubules, will be reabsorbing the water. Okay, so vasopressin or ADH will be reabsorbing the water, while the aldosterone will be responsible for reabsorption of sodium, chlorine and HCO3. Okay. Now, once these tubules are done, that is PCT, proximal convoluted tubules, then loop of Henle, descending and ascending, thin segment, thick segment, okay, then the DCT. Now the next one will be the reabsorption in the collecting tubules and collecting ducts. So here the collecting tubules, all these DCTs will be opening into collecting ducts. That is the collecting tubules will be the common passage for them. So over here only reabsorption of water will take place. So in the case of collecting tubules and collectants, what will be there? The reabsorption of only water will take place, and that will be under the hormone vasopressin. So they are also regulated by the hormone vasopressin. Okay. So here the reabsorption of collecting tubule, reabsorption of water will take place under the vasopressin. Now, when the vasopressin is present, urine becomes more and more hypertonic. It means the urine will be having less water. When the hormone, in the presence of hormone, the urine will be less. Urine will be having less water, and hence it is hypertonic. Okay. While when there is a high amount of hormone, when the hormone is absent, the urine will be hypotonic, or the urine will be hypotonic, and it will be having more water. So we can say the main function of the ADH, or we can say vasopressin, is to retain the water in the body, or to prevent the loss of water, and hence maintaining the blood volume and blood pressure. Okay, so that was about the reabsorption in the collecting ducts or collecting tubules. The first part was the glomerular filtration, second part was the tubular reabsorption, and the third part is the tubular secretion. Now we know that as only 15 to 25% of the blood plasma is filtered out of glomerular filtrate. Not all the blood plasma is basically filtered out. So still there will be a lot of other nitrogen vestige will be present in the blood, which are not filtered yet. Okay, so there will be a lot of vestige present in the blood which will not be filtered yet, and this has to be brought into this urine. Or we can say the filtrate. This is carried out by a lot of waste products remain in the anterior arteriolar blood present in the peritubular capillaries. These peritubular capillaries are the capillaries which are surrounding these tubules. These are the capillaries, here you can see. These are the ones which are surrounding these tubules. So still these tubules will be also having lot of vestige present within them. So what happens? These tubules will be actively secreting it into nephric filter. So all the waste material which is present in this peritubular capillaries around the nephric tubules consist of DCT, PCT, loop of Henle and all that. Okay. So what happens? This peritubular capillaries will be having some waste which will be actively secreted into the nephric filtrate in maybe PCT and DCT. Okay, how exactly it is done, still it is not very much clear, but still it is known that apart from glomerular filtration, the tubular secretion is also responsible for adding the waste to the urine or adding the waste to the filtrate. Okay, so this is the last stage of the urine formation. So glomerular filtration, tubular reabsorption, and tubular secretion. Tubular secretion. So you can see once the glomerular filtration is done, the reabsorption will be taking place in different places. So major part of the reabsorption taking place at the PCT, proximal convoluted tubules. After which the loop of Henle, the descending part of loop of Henle will be mainly responsible for removing out the H2O. The H2O will be again reabsorbed, and hence we can say this is decreasing the H2O content in this filtrate, and hence the filtrate is getting concentrated. So this thin segment of this descending loop is called as descending limb of the loop of Henle is called as concentrating agent. While in the case of ascending one, this ascending limb is totally impermeable to water. It is totally impermeable to water. So what will happen? This thin segment will be releasing out the NaCl from high concentration to low concentration by simple diffusion. So it will release out the NaCl, while the thick segment will be releasing out the NaCl by active transportation. And due to this, what will happen? The extracellular fluid or the interstitial fluid will be now, this fluid outside this tube will be basically hypertonic, and the fluid which is present inside is hypotonic because the solids are removed out. So it will be basically causing dilution of this filtrate. It is causing dilution of the filtrate, and hence this ascending limb is also called as diluting agent. This is called as diluting agent. So make sure the descending is called as concentrating agent, while the ascending is called as diluting agent. Okay, once there, the DCT, the distal convoluted tubules, it is the one which is responsible for only absorption of mainly the water, and sometime we can say it will be removing the water. Okay, mainly under the effect of the aldosterone and the vasopressin. So aldosterone will be responsible for movement of NaCl, and vasopressin responsible for movement of water. The water will be reabsorbed. Okay, so water will be reabsorbed by the effect of vasopressin, and the NaCl will be reabsorbed by the effect of aldosterone. Okay, next then the water will be basically, then the filtrate will be getting into this collecting duct and then collecting tubules. This will be also under the effect of the aldosterone, or mainly the, not aldosterone, but mainly effect of vasopressin. They will be also reabsorb the water. So water will be reabsorbed from here as well, and then the urine will be formed. That was about the urine formation. Okay, so next one more thing is there's a counter current mechanism. Okay, now it says that when there is a flow of, here we can see, when there is a flow of substance filtrate from this side, this from loop of Henle and from PCT and from DCT. So these all tubules are also surrounded by capillaries, that is peritubular capillaries, and this tubular capillaries which is basically present surrounding this loop of Henle, this tubular capillary which is surrounding this loop of Henle is called as vasa recta. Okay, so here we can say the transport of substances facilitated by special arrangement of Henle's loop. It's basically transport of substances across this membrane, across the uptake of the different substances. Okay, made possible is facilitated by the special arrangement of Henle's loop and vasa recta. Is called as counter current mechanism. Current is basically the movement. Okay, and when the movement is taking place in both these tubules, like the loop of Henle and the vasa recta, so what will happen? The movement of both fluids will be countering each other, and this will be responsible for transportation of substances. And hence called as counter current mechanism. The concentration of the urine is due to loop of Henle. We know that the concentration of loop, that because the loop of Henle is descending limb is called as concentrating agent. So the concentration of urine is due to loop of Henle, and we can say the length of loop of Henle will be deciding the concentration. So if the length of loop of Henle is high, it will be more concentrated. It is so small, it is low, it is not so long. Okay, then it will be not that much concentrated. Okay, now the capability of concentrating the urine is largely related to the length of loop of Henle, as we've seen. Okay, now the concentration is also helped by vasa recta and flow of urea. So along with this, the vasa recta will be also possessing some substances where they will be also helping the concentration, because they will be responsible for maintaining the concentration gradient. Okay, the loop of Henle and vasa recta both form counter current system, which is significantly involved in concentrating the urine. Okay, so what happens? This urine which is present in this loop of Henle will be getting concentrated due to the vasorecta which is present just surrounding the loop of Henle, and will be absorbing the mostly the water by counteracting each other. Okay, this is how this concentration will be taking place. So here is that you can see all this reabsorption, all that. Okay. Now the whole reabsorption is basically taking place in 3 different phases. Mainly, during this formation of urine, the filtrate will be moving through medulla to cortical. So the filtrate will be basically having 3 tips. Will be giving 3 trips. The filtrate will be passing through the different tubules in different and making 3 trips from the cortical region to the medullary region, or from medullary region to cortical region, right? So the filtrate which is passing through these tubules will be showing 3 different trips passing through this. Okay, like first of all, here we can say it is passing from proximal to loop of Henle. So here we can say the first down the descending limb. So proximal PCT to the loop of Henle, descending one, and then it will be, this is the first strip. Next strip will be from this loop of Henle to the DCT, that is the up to ascending limb. Okay, so this ascending limb will be transferring from loop of Henle's part, the apex part of the loop of Henle or the center part of loop of Henle to the DCT. Okay, that is the ascending limb. So once the descending, second is the ascending, and the last one is the movement of the fluid in the filtrate in this collecting tube. So here we can see it is basically forming 3 trips. One trip, this is second trip, and this is the third trip. So this filtrate will be basically having 3 trips of the whole medullary cortical region. So why it is required? Because this will be helping to maintain the concentration gradient. It will be helping to maintain the concentration gradient in medullary interstitium, which helps in easy passage of H2O and from the collecting duct, thereby concentrating the filtrate. So as the water concentration is required in this medullary region, due to which the water will be, the concentration of the filtrate will be done properly. Now human kidneys can produce nearly around 4 times of concentrated. The human kidneys which produce the urine is nearly around 4 times more concentrated than the initial filtrate formed. So the initial filtrate which is formed during the glomerular filtration is basically much less concentrated. During this passage of the fluid from different regions, okay, the reabsorption will be taking place in different region, okay, and will be responsible for making the filtrate much more concentrated, which will respond for making the filtrate much more concentrated, and hence this urine will be this whole process will be responsible for 2 reasons. First of all, it will be preventing the water loss from the body, and hence it can save the body from the dehydration. Second, it will be also preventing the loss of the essential substances like the different elements, sodium, potassium, calcium, etc. It can also it also retains the nutrient substance which are released out of the filtrate. Okay, so it is so important. The reabsorption is very important part of the urine formation. So that was all about the urine formation. In the next topic we will be studying the regulation of the kidney function. That's all. Thank you and have a nice day. Bye bye.